The root of a triad is really central to its identity. In fact, very often we will use the root to create a name for a particular chord. Let me give you an example of that. Suppose I were to build a triad on the note G. Let me do that. Let me write a G right here on the second line of the treble clef. So that's going to be our root note. It's our root because that is the note on which we are going to calculate, or which we are going to build the other notes of the chord. Then we know that we need a third above the root, and we're going to need a fifth above the root. So a third above the root is going to be G, A, B, 1, 2, 3. So B is going to be our third, and then our fifth is going to be G, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's going to be a D. So we have G, B, D. Our root, our third, and our fifth. And one of the ways in which we can refer to this chord is we can call this a G chord. We can call it a G chord because the root is G. And again, that is central to what this chord is, central to its identity. Specifically, we call this chord a G major chord. And in an upcoming video, we'll learn exactly what we mean by a major chord and its partner, the minor chord, and also the augmented chord and the diminished chord. That'll be for a future video. What I want to talk about right now, though, is the fact that it's not always convenient and it's not always musically interesting for us to just play a triad with all three notes stacked up, one on top of the other like this. G, B, D. There are a lot of ways that we can mix these three notes up that will make the chord even more interesting and sometimes more useful to us in a particular musical context. And one of the first ways that we're going to talk about in which we can change the order of these notes is through inversion. And before we actually get started on the idea of inversion, remember we've encountered this idea of inversion before when we talked about interval inversion. And let's just review for a second. What did we mean when we talked about interval inversion? Well, remember, in interval inversion, we had an interval, meaning two notes. And let's actually pick the first two notes that we have in the G chord here, the G and the B. And we said there is one of those notes is on the bottom, and that is the G. And one of those notes is on the top, which is the B. And that has a particular sound, the G and B sounding together. But we can also flip the order and still retain something important about that sound, meaning rather than having the G on the bottom and the B on the top, we can flip these, and we can have, if we say put the G up here, we can flip the positions of the notes and have the G on the top and the B on the bottom. So here's the first one. Here's the second one. Two intervals. Both of those intervals consist of a G and a B. But in the first one, their positions are one way. In the second one, their positions are flipped. And they're basically two states that you can have with a two-note interval. You can have one note in the top and one in the bottom, and then you can have that order flipped. But when we start to invert a chord, a triad that has three notes, we now have three different positions in which we can make these inversions. And then in the next video, we will actually explore each of those different positions, each of those three positions that we can have.